Hi everyone, before watching the video, please give me a like and subscribe. Thank you very much. On the third day after I fled our wedding, my fiancée committed suicide in our bridal suite. She left her entire fortune to me. While clearing out her belongings, I discovered a wall covered from top to bottom with photographs of myself. Her nanny told me, "The young miss loved you for many, many years. She lived a tragic life and suffered from severe depression. Only seeing you or thinking of you brought her a glimmer of peace." Every word she spoke left me terrified and breathless, yet filled with an inexplicable sense of sorrow and loneliness. And so, I have been reborn. Facing the escape plan arranged by my childhood friend, I smile and decline. "I'm not going," I say. "I want to see for myself just how foolish this woman, the one who loved me more than her own life, really was." Eleanor White died on the third day after I abandoned our wedding. My father and brother, with apologetic faces, had informed her of my flight. I had barely stepped out of the villa when I received the news. Eleanor had slit her wrists. The emergency efforts failed. She was gone. In a will prepared long ago, she left everything she owned to me. I was abroad when my brother called. My face grew rigid as I listened. In my eyes, Eleanor was a manipulative woman who had suddenly appeared to force a marriage upon me. We were strangers, yet her deceptive, lowly appearance hid a truth. She had loved me for years. At the lawyer's request, I hurried back to the country and solemnly received Eleanor's urn. Her background was a mystery. She had no living kin. Her grieving nanny looked at the square box and said softly, "The young miss loved you for many years. Her depression was very severe. Only seeing you or thinking of you helped. I thought that once you married her, she wouldn't be so pessimistic anymore. But I never expected." She trailed off without a hint of reproach, yet my heart tightened painfully. My assistant handed me a key. "This is the villa the young miss prepared for you. It's the bridal home she decorated with her own hands, and the place where she took her life." The estate was massive, featuring a private racecourse on a lush green lawn. The style was exactly what I loved, light gray interiors and decor that matched my tastes perfectly. Inside, there was a room filled with photos of me. I realized with a jolt that from my sophomore year of college until now, I had almost always been in the lens of this woman's camera. On the floor, the dark stains left behind for where she slit her wrists looked like a shattered, wretched heart, fragile and lowly. It was terrifying and suffocating, yet it filled me with an inexplicable, soul-crushing grief. I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger. If she loved me, why didn't she just say so? Instead, she burst into my life like a robber, demanding marriage the moment she opened her mouth. How could I have ever been willing to marry her? Was this tragic seeing her way of ensuring I'd be haunted by guilt and regret for the rest of my life, unable to ever forget her? In her dreams, in my past life, I donated her entire fortune, including that villa. The cleaning crew tore those photos off the wall, carelessly scattering them on the floor to cover the bloodstains. Eleanor White's short, legendary life vanished completely from this world. It took me 3 days to accept the fact that I had been reborn. 3 days ago, Eleanor had just arrived at my house, ruthlessly demanding a marriage alliance with tactics that felt like blackmail. My childhood friend, hearing the news, immediately told me to leave and hide out for 2 days. In my previous life, that's exactly what I did. But in this life, I remembered that wall of photos and the horrifying bloodstains on the floor. I calmly shook my head. "I'm not going," I said. "I want to see just how foolish this girl who loves me more than life itself really is." Eleanor's business empire was massive. When I went to find her, she was still in a meeting. Her assistant, Dustin, came down to greet me and asked me to wait in the office, saying the CEO would be down shortly. I asked one question, and, as expected, Eleanor arrived before I could even finish a single cup of tea. She walked in quickly, but stopped abruptly when she saw me, calling out calmly, "Mr. Silas." Her expression was cold and distant, as if she were looking at a complete stranger. Her icy demeanor left me speechless. I thought for a moment, and then asked her, "Ms. White, why are you so insistent on this marriage alliance with me?" Eleanor maintained her indifferent facade. "If I want to marry, I marry. I don't need a reason." I was momentarily at a loss for words. I stood up. "Well then, I'll be going." Eleanor's expression flickered. For a rare moment, she looked flustered. "You're leaving already?" I looked at her without expression. Her face gradually grew pale, and though she seemed shrouded in her own gloom, she still stepped aside to let me out. If I wasn't absolutely certain that this person loved me, I would truly think she was toyed with me. I sighed and took the initiative. "How about we go out for a meal together?" The way Eleanor interacted with me left even her assistant looking terrified. As I was leaving, the assistant kept apologizing. "The CEO isn't very good at talking to people. Mr. Silas, please don't be angry with her." "I'm not angry," I said with a smile. I actually quite like her cold, distant look. It suits my taste. The office door wasn't fully closed. Through the small crack, I clearly saw Eleanor touching her own face with a dazed expression. I chuckled softly and told the assistant, "I made a date with your boss for dinner tonight. Remind her not to stand me up." The assistant nodded frantically, as if afraid I might change my mind the very next second. I walked out of the corporate headquarters and immediately received a call from my childhood friend. Looking at the contact name, Little Sister Haley, on my phone, I calmly set my thoughts aside and gazed up at the clouds drifting across the sky. Haley had been attached to my hip since we were kids. She truly cared for me. But whether it's a childhood friend or any other companion, everyone eventually fades away into the long stretch of their own lives. In my past life, she found a lover, had children, and learned to distance herself from me. When I was finally trapped in the deep mountains with my expedition team, I called her, only to be mocked by her husband. "What are you pretending for, Silas? You call yourself a player, yet you're trying to play mountain climber." Haley was right there while her husband insulted me, but she remained silent. I died there, never knowing what she truly thought. That evening, Eleanor White arrived very early. The atmosphere during dinner was frigid. I tried to find topics to discuss, but she was like a conversation killer. Nothing I said seemed to pique her interest. Getting tired of the effort, I set my fork and knife down firmly on the table. "Ms. White, if you act like this, it makes me feel like you have no desire to build a family with me at all." Eleanor merely bowed her head. "I'm sorry. That's not what I want to hear." I felt truly helpless. I had managed a company for years and almost never lost at the negotiating table. My judgment of people was rarely wrong. Yet here I was. "It seems to me that you have zero interest in a marital relationship with me." Eleanor's face turned pale. Her fingertips dug in her palms so hard that blood began to seep out. "Don't overthink it," she said. "I've just never been this close to you before, so I'm a bit unaccustomed to it." That sudden, almost confession-like statement caught me off guard, revealing her hidden tension and loneliness. Moreover, the blood trickling from her palms didn't look faked. I suddenly remembered her nanny's word from my past life. The young Mrs. Depression was very severe. Only seeing him could make her feel better. "Ms. White, I'm suddenly very curious," I asked her directly. "Have we met before?" Eleanor's thin lips trembled. Her eyes instinctively avoided mine, turning toward the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows. "Since when have we known each other?" I pressed, but Eleanor bit her lips shut, refusing to say another word. Frustrated, I went back to eating my steak and stopped searching for topics. Eleanor didn't say anything either. She didn't even seem to realize the atmosphere was awkward. She just stared blankly at my lips and my neck, her gaze following the red wine as I swallowed, inch by inch down my moving Adam's apple. Trying to stay polite, I didn't move. I watched her calmly, and she flustered, turning her head away. Her face went pale, and she accidentally bit her lip hard enough to draw fresh blood. "If you want to look, just look openly," I thought helplessly. "Stop being so sneaky. If nothing goes wrong, we'll be married soon anyway." "Ms. White, could you be a bit more straightforward?" In my head, I kept grumbling. She had taken so many photos of me, hired so many people to follow me, and apparently even bribed my family's housekeeper. If she hadn't died such a tragic death in my previous life, I would have called the police and reported her as a stalker long ago. But as her assistant said, Eleanor was sick, and one should be more patient with the sick. I took the initiative to grab her hand, ignoring her momentary frozen expression. I dampened a tissue with water and gently wiped away the blood from her palm. "Such beautiful hands. Can you stop digging your nails into them?" Eleanor White didn't answer. She simply stared intently into my eyes. After a long while, she asked with a haunting naivety, "Mr. Silas, by doing this, does it mean you've agreed to marry me? Did you ever give me a choice to say no?" She gripped the fabric of her skirt with both hands, looking slightly timid. Actually, if you didn't want to, you could have just run away. Or I could have found you and yelled at you to your face, I said, looking directly into her eyes. Doing that wouldn't have been a problem for me. But Eleanor, what would happen to you? The outcome was obvious, wasn't it? She would die. In my past life, I hadn't understood how someone could be so fragile, so broken, that they would end their life just because of a rumor that their fiancé had fled, without even a final meeting. But I couldn't bear to watch her die again. Eleanor was an undeniable genius. She had razor-sharp vision. Her information came from mysterious sources, and her true background remained an enigma no matter how deep anyone dug. I had watched her seize the dawn of the internet era, rising to the top with effortless grace while crushing the long-standing elite families of the city until they couldn't breathe. Yet, a woman like that, at the pinnacle of her life, committed suicide over a man. In my previous life, she became a laughingstock. Her rivals fueled the fire, labeling her the queen of simps, mocking her with the cruelest words imaginable. I didn't want any of that to happen again. On the way home, my mind was a void, swirling with thoughts. Finally, looking at Eleanor's expressionless face beside me, I decided I needed to talk to her assistant in 2 days. I truly didn't know how to coexist with her, and I wondered if there was really no cure for her condition. The black Rolls-Royce pulled up in front of my villa. By pure coincidence, Haley was there, carrying a box of pastries. Eleanor's eyes darkened instantly. Should I go down and say hello? I asked, tilting my head. She's just the girl next door. Eleanor gripped the steering wheel tight. No need. Go home, Mr. Silas. She tried to sound indifferent, but I could feel a sudden chill emanating from her, layered with a bitterness as sharp as swallowing gall. I looked out the window. She and I are truly just friends. Don't overthink it. I'm not. I'm really not. I turned and saw her knuckles white against the wheel, faint scars beginning to show under the strain. I rubbed my temples. Ms. White, if something is bothering you, can you please just tell me? Keeping it buried like this is going to make being together very difficult. Forced by my pressure, Eleanor turned her head away, refusing to meet my gaze. She stammered, I just don't like her very much. Then I won't spend time with her. Simple as that. I ruffled her hair as a gesture of encouragement. She's just a friend. You don't have to force yourself to like her. Besides, we are going to be husband and wife soon. That's a relationship many times more intimate than whatever I have with her. If her presence bothers you, I'll make sure to keep my distance from now on. Eleanor looked stunned. Mr. Silas, you would distance yourself from her for me? Why not? I pressed my advantage, leaning in close. See? Problems only get solved when you speak up. If you're unhappy with me or have something on your mind, you must tell me. Don't bottle it up and let it eat you alive. She seemed clueless. It became clear to me. Eleanor had no idea how to navigate an intimate relationship. She applied cold business negotiation tactics to her feelings, forcing a marriage alliance, but then became flustered and lost when I took the initiative. In the realm of love, she was terrifyingly naive. That's fine, I thought. I can teach her. Haley watched me step out of Eleanor's car. Her grip tightened on the pastry box, her expression turning fragile. Once the car pulled away, she approached me. Have you really decided to marry that woman? She's beautiful, wealthy, and has a clean reputation. Why wouldn't I? But she... Haley stopped mid-sentence, looking panicked and confused. She took a few shallow breaths, clutching her chest, before forcing out. Are you sure you love her? In our circle, who actually marries for love? She suits me. I shrugged. Haley's eyes widened. But how can she compare to us? We grew up together. Haley, I interrupted coldly. I am getting married. There are things you shouldn't say anymore. It leads to misunderstandings. After saying my piece, I walked straight into the house without looking back. To be honest, even after being reborn, I still didn't fully understand Haley's attitude toward me. When times were good, she was wonderful, staying by my bedside when I was sick. When times were bad, she was terrible. Even now, she couldn't remember my birthday. In my past life, I had broached the subject of a marriage alliance, but she rejected me, saying she wanted to play around for a couple more years. Yet, while making snowmen in St. Petersburg, she fell for a tall, muscular foreigner at first sight and was married with a child in less than 3 months. Her husband resented my existence, So I cut off contact, never imagining that would be our final goodbye. I suppose Haley might have felt some grief when she heard of my death. After all, when the school bullies picked on her, I was the one who held her hand, tracked them down, and gave them back every slap they gave her. The next day, I went to find Eleanor. She was in a meeting again. Through the glass walls, I watched her serious, focused expression. While waiting in the lounge, I tried to talk to her assistant, Dustin. His lips were sealed tight. He kept talking in circles to avoid giving anything away. Clearly, when it came to her illness, he was going to play deaf and mute. I felt truly powerless. Don't you think being honest with me is what's best for her condition? I pressured him. But the young miss doesn't want you to know, he replied. She said she wants to remain perfect in your eyes, forever, without a single flaw. He then added cryptically, the young miss deeply hopes that you can rely on her. What are you two talking about? Eleanor White entered after a meeting, running a hand through her hair. She looked exhausted. Tell me, since you're this beautiful, did you get plastic surgery? I leaned back on the sofa, watching her. But your assistant says no. That's a shame. Your beauty is almost indescribable. Eleanor froze. The assistant had already made a discreet exit and closed the door, leaving the lounge deathly quiet. I heard the rustle of her clothes as she spoke in a voice so low it was almost a whisper. Do you like this face? Is that so surprising? I frowned. Is it possible you aren't aware of how beautiful you are? The tips of her ears turned red. She looked away awkwardly, no longer meeting my gaze. To be honest, calling you a mess, White feels too distant now, doesn't it? I walked over to her and reached out to ruffle her hair. It was silky and soft to the touch, carrying a faint, pleasant fragrance. I leaned down close to her ear. How about I call you Ellie? Eleanor suddenly shoved me away, a flash of anger crossing her face. I couldn't understand why she was angry, just as I didn't understand why she loved me. She sat behind her desk, turning her back to me, her voice heavy with fatigue. Go away, Silas. But I still wanted to have lunch with you. No need. She rejected me without hesitation. I have things to do this afternoon. What is she up to? I looked at her, then spoke slowly. All right then. Watch the time, and don't skip your meal. I walked out, but lingered by the door. Under the tense gaze of her assistant, I heard the sound of objects being smashed, followed by Eleanor's low, pained growl. I had intentionally left the door slightly ajar. Her cries of agony and despair, mingled with the sound of shattering glass, echoed out. I tapped on the assistant's desk, my expression stern. Are you still planning on keeping me in the dark? He looked conflicted, but I didn't wait for an answer. I walked straight back inside. Eleanor had become incredibly small, curled into a ball in the corner, clutching her head amidst a pile of broken glass. The carpet was stained with blood. I couldn't tell if she had scratched herself or if it was from shards. I stepped over the broken glass and approached her. Eleanor lowered her head in a panic, her body trembling violently, refusing to look at me no matter what. I placed a hand on her shoulder. What's wrong? She looked so fragile, so small, barely over 5 feet tall. I could lift her with just one arm. I knelt beside her, using tweezers to carefully remove the bloody glass shards from her palm. Eleanor White lifted her head and stared at me, her voice hoarse as she asked, It's ugly, isn't it? What is? Your hands. I was stunned, looking at the slender fingers before me. They were so delicate, they seemed to be made of nothing but a thin layer of skin. I couldn't help but mutter to myself, how can this woman have so little self-preservation? They are beautiful. I leaned down helplessly and pressed a soft kiss against her fingertips. Truly beautiful. Yet, Eleanor still didn't look happy. She asked me, Is this how you talk to your ex-girlfriends? Pleasing me, being kind to me, calling me Ellie, do they get to enjoy this treatment too? A strange silence fell between us. So, she had just lost her mind over that? I thought the name Ellie might have triggered a bad memory from her birth family or something. It turns out it was just a flare-up of her obsessive love. How could someone so powerful and brilliant be so pathetically tormented by her feelings? I ruffled her hair and sighed softly. You little fool. I've dated quite a bit. I'm handsome, and my family is well off. It was inevitable that I'd be moved by a few people. But for families like ours, dating and marriage are two different things. My father told me long ago, date whoever you want, but when the time comes, you come home and marry for the alliance. I helped her up to the sofa and called the staff to clear the floor. I poured her a glass of warm water, bustling about with concern. Eleanor caught my hand. "You don't need to do these things, Mr. Silas." I followed the pull of her hand and sat down. I suspected she had investigated exactly how many exes I had. I used to be a bit of a playboy and did my fair share of wild things. If she was bothered by that, there wasn't much I could do about the past. "Don't contact them anymore." Eleanor's sudden words cut through my thoughts. I tilted my head to look at her, seeing the dead serious expression on her face. I couldn't help but find it slightly amusing. "Are you giving me an order?" Her body stiffened instantly, and her breathing grew shallow. Realizing she might have overstepped, she turned her face away in tension. "If you want to contact them, you have to tell me first. Otherwise, if I find out, I won't contact them." I interrupted. Then I asked, "Was all that rage just now because of my exes?" Eleanor said nothing. I felt a wave of helplessness. "Can you just tell me what's on your mind? When you act like this, it's exhausting for me. Saying nothing, getting angry for no reason, and smashing things. I don't even know how to comfort you anymore. So, does that mean all those exes of yours were better than me?" Eleanor suddenly cut me off. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her questioning tone was as raw and naive as a child's. How did things even get to this point? I clearly just wanted to have a proper conversation with her. I braced myself and asked her helplessly, "If you're going to obsess over these things, there's nothing I can do. I don't think dating a few times is a crime against humanity. What's in the past stays in the past. Why do you have to be so stubborn about making yourself miserable? Eleanor, does digging all of this up and demanding answers actually make you happy? Fine, I'll tell you. Yes, I did date them, and when I was with them, I liked them sincerely. Does hearing that make you happy?" Eleanor's eyes grew increasingly red, as if she were about to break down. Seeing me stand up, she frantically reached for my sleeve, but stopped when I looked down at her. Her voice was trembling. "I used to think that as long as I cooperated with you, we could get along. But now I realize I simply cannot adapt to the way you think." Seeing her tear-filled eyes, I softened my voice. "You aren't happy being with me, and you're even hurting yourself. Eleanor, how about we just call off the wedding?" "No." Eleanor stared at me firmly with those red eyes, gripping my arm tighter and repeating, "We are not calling it off." Our faces were so close, I could see the faint, fine hair on her cheeks. Combined with her sorrowful tone, it really felt like I was bullying a child. I rubbed her head, my mind a blank, and asked her once more, "Then tell me, what is the real reason you want to marry me?" Eleanor's gaze flickered, and she instinctively tried to turn away, but I held her chin firmly. "Tell me, Eleanor. Speak to me." I stared into her eyes without blinking. I didn't want to be kept in the dark anymore. "You idiot." Her eyelashes quivered, her voice barely audible. "I want to marry you." "Why do you want to marry me?" Her eyes brimmed with tears as she blinked up at me, half pleading, half struggling to speak. I said it for her. "You love me, don't you?" "You dummy, there's nothing wrong with saying that." I stroked her cheek and moved to stand up, but she suddenly pulled me back, pinning me down onto the sofa. The gentle facade she usually wore was torn away as she clung to my shoulders, sobbing. She choked out, "I'm disgusting like this, aren't I? Someone as disgusting as me loving you. It's repulsive, isn't it?" I looked at her in disbelief. What on earth was going on in her head? She thinks she's disgusting? Repulsive? Does she not know she's consistently voted the #1 woman people want to marry in online polls? How could someone like her be this insecure? I felt like I was starting to see a glimpse of the truth. I cupped her face, forcing her to look up, and wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. "My friends are all envious that I'm marrying you. They say I must have saved the world in 8 past lives to deserve you. Why is it that to you, this is something shameful? Please have some confidence. This 32-story building and this office are all yours. Out there, who doesn't treat you with respect or call you CEO White? And you are so beautiful. Even if I were to fall for you, wouldn't that be the most natural thing in the world?" Eleanor's body trembled slightly as she asked me in disbelief, "Mr. Silas, you like me? What else did you think? Do you think a man comes to see you every single day just because he's bored and has nothing better to do?" I patted her back and spoke to her with absolute sincerity. "Ellie, men don't waste their time on people they aren't interested in. You need to have some confidence. You are wonderful, truly wonderful. We'll be great together in the future, believe me." Eleanor began to cry again. Her tears soaked my collar, warm and filled with a silent plea. Mr. Silas, you mustn't lie to me. I'm not lying to you. My heart softened completely. I gently rubbed her earlobe, feeling the warmth and dampness on my neck and the thumping of her heart. Perhaps among all my exes, there had never been anyone quite like her. It was shocking how fragile Eleanor's mental core was. A single sentence from me, one word, or even just an attitude could easily cause her to collapse. This was a trait that shouldn't belong to the head of a listed company. Yet the reality was as strange and illogical as that. She stood up sheepishly, her face flushed red, though she habitually tried to put on her cold, distant mask as she asked, "Mr. Silas, are you hungry?" "A little." I stood up and smoothed out the back of my shirt, pulling down the hem that had been tugged out of place to cover my exposed waist. Eleanor turned her face away, her skin turning as red as a ripe apple, which piqued my interest. Is she really this pure? She's nearly 30. Could it be that she's never done it before? I suppressed the speculation in my mind and lazily made a request. "Have your assistant order something and bring it up here. I don't feel like moving." "All right." Eleanor went out to give instructions to her assistant. I watched the silhouette of her pale legs under the light and her waist, which looked small enough to wrap my hands around, and sighed. A beautiful face, a great figure, wealthy and loyal. If it weren't for her mental instability, I probably wouldn't have stood a chance with her in 8 lifetimes. A large part of Eleanor's mental instability stemmed from insomnia. Her assistant had told me, looking extremely embarrassed, "Many nights, the young miss sleeps while holding a photo of you." I didn't ask her where she got the photos. The assistant let out a sigh of relief because of that. When I returned to Eleanor's side, I stared at her while she worked for a long time. The tips of her ears turned red, and she seemed unable to concentrate. She put down her documents. "Am I that beautiful?" I nodded instinctively, then remembered my main goal. "Can I go to your house to take a look? Specifically, the marital home you've prepared." Eleanor was stunned. "Why do you suddenly want to go there?" "I want to see it. After all, it's where we'll be living later on." She never says no to me. After hearing my request, she simply nodded and added, "If there's anything you're unhappy with, just let me know." The second time I stepped into that elegant, high-end villa, my eyes couldn't help but well up. Here, the space was bright. The sunlight streamed in at an angle, making the house feel warm and comfortable. It was nothing like the freezing cold of my past life, a cold that made one want to end it all. I stole a glance at the locked room at the far right of the second floor. I knew that inside were countless photos of me and oil paintings she had made of my likeness. They were clearly of my face, right down to the small black mole near the corner of my eye. I followed Eleanor silently into the master bedroom. The bed was adorned with deep red sheets and a duvet printed with a large double happiness symbol. Standing by the bed, I felt caught between laughter and tears. Finally, I tugged at Eleanor's sleeve and asked, "Did you really want to marry me this badly?" She blinked her beautiful eyes. "Is there something you're dissatisfied with?" "Everything is perfect." I pulled her down to sit on the bed. "When did you start preparing all this?" "In the last few days." She habitually reached out her hand for me to play with, behaving with an irredeemable level of obedience. The room next door was where she had committed suicide in my previous life, with blood splattered across the floor. But now, she was in my arms, her head resting against my neck, her expression peaceful and gentle, like a predator lounging on the grass under the sun after a full meal. Had I truly changed her fate? The wedding date was drawing near. I want to see her every day, staying until very late before heading home. My mother scolded me several times, saying I couldn't even control myself for these few days. Eleanor, however, seemed very happy. She was eating more, and her thin fingers had filled out a bit. One day, as I was about to head up to her office, I saw Haley waiting downstairs. The moment she saw me, she grabbed me tightly. "I caught you. Let's go abroad. Right now. Are you crazy?" I looked at her in disbelief and shook her hand off. "Think whatever you want, but I absolutely cannot let you sink this deep into this," Haley hissed, her teeth clenched. "You don't love her, you're just curious. You can't just throw your whole life away like this." "Whether I love her or not is none of your business," I said, finding it strange. "Don't you think you're meddling a bit too much?" Haley's eyes were bloodshot as a look of intense pain suddenly washed over her face. It was as if she had lost all her strength. Her voice was very soft as she pleaded with me. Can we enter a marriage alliance instead? Silas, you can't just discard me like this. She looked pathetic, like she'd been beaten, her clothes rumpled and messy. She was desperately begging for my pity. I remembered what a close friend had told me in my past life when Haley got married. If you had been the one to marry first, she definitely would have gone insane. That love at first sight with that tall foreigner. How could that ever compare to the history between you and her? She had simply relied on the fact that over the years, you had grown bored of playing around and lost interest in other women. She was your only female friend, and that's why she dared to indulge her whims so recklessly. Haley, I called her name with a heavy, complex heart. I reached out to brush the dust off her shoulder. Go home. I'll act as if I never heard a word of what you said today. I'm getting married soon. You should be more mindful from now on. If people misunderstand, it'll be hard to explain. She stared at me with a strained expression as tears began to fall. She whispered softly, Is it really true that missing my chance just once means there's no way back? We are friends, I replied, using the exact words she had used to reject me in my past life. If you want, we can be friends for a lifetime. When I walked through the door, Eleanor was sitting on the sofa, radiating a heavy, low-pressure aura. Why are you home so late today, Mr. Silas? I ran into a friend downstairs and chatted for a bit. I placed the pastries I'd brought on the table, only to turn around and see her face still shrouded in gloom. It was a bit strange. What's wrong with you? Eleanor looked up at me, her voice carrying an inexplicable sense of grievance. How was your conversation with Haley? How did you know? I started to ask, but then I remembered the swarm of people she had planted around me and realized there was no point. I told the truth. She came to find me and said she wanted to go away with me. A flash of coldness flickered in Eleanor's eyes. I patted her shoulder, pulled her into my arms, and said lazily, but I turned her down. I told her I like you more. Eleanor let out a tiny, soft sound, and the smile on my face deepened. Aren't you going to praise me? I just proved my loyalty to you right in front of another woman. Oh, I'm not satisfied with that. I pinched her beautiful cheek, pretending to be annoyed. How can you have no reaction at all? Flustered, Eleanor looked at me, stood up, and pulled a box from a drawer. Inside was a diamond watch. Is this the one from the Hong Kong auction? I couldn't help but laugh. The watch was excellent and incredibly expensive. Eleanor had spent $30 million on it back then. The headlines that night were all about the fool who spent $30 million on a watch. Why did you buy this? Mr. Silas likes blue, she said softly. I think it suits me perfectly. Thank you, Ellie. I wrapped my arms around her neck and nuzzled against her cheek. The auction was 2 months ago. Why are you only giving it to me now? Mr. Silas was unhappy today, she whispered. I originally planned to give it to you on your birthday, but I thought this might make you feel better now. I thought back to my feigned annoyance just a moment ago and went silent, finding it slightly hilarious. This woman, she really can't tell the difference between a boy being truly angry and just playing along. Can she? I pinched her cheek gently. I'm not angry, really, but I'm very happy right now. Ellie, I'm truly starting to like you more and more. Eleanor's cheeks flushed a soft pink. She let me pull her onto my lap, staying still as I pressed a kiss to her forehead. To be honest, aside from that one breakdown where she lost control, I hadn't seen much evidence of Eleanor's illness. When she was with me, she just seemed like someone a bit slow to understand romance. An ordinary woman who didn't quite know how to handle men. Yet, her assistant reminded me time and time again, please, do not provoke her. I couldn't help but ask him, has her condition worsened lately? No, the assistant replied. The young Mrs. Mood has actually improved significantly. She hasn't even needed sleeping pills lately. Then why do you keep warning me? Because the only reason she is getting better is that you're close to her. If you were to grow disgusted and leave, the consequences would be catastrophic. He practically pleaded with me. I don't know what your motives were for approaching her, but I beg you, don't just walk away on a whim. She will truly lose her mind. She might even die. I finished the sentence in my head. I patted his shoulder. Don't worry. I treasure her even more than you do. I am no savior, nor am I a professional psychiatrist. I can only do my best to ensure Eleanor isn't in pain. I want her to be a little happier. When the mood is right, everything else follows. I am an adult with my own judgment. I won't change my view of her just because of some stray comment from a bitter relative. I leaned down and hugged Eleanor's shoulders. I like you, and I have a voice. If something comes up, I'll ask you directly. I'm never leaving. Besides, you're so remarkable. I have no intention of handing you over to someone else and letting them reap the benefits. A spark shimmered in Eleanor's eyes, as brilliant as a diamond. Compared to when I first met her, the icy aura surrounding her had thawed significantly. There was a touch of human warmth in her now. She no longer looked like a piece of dead wood that could snap at any moment. My presence was finally having a real impact on her. I could roughly guess that her biological family had caused her immense suffering. But when she held me and whispered that she hated her own name, I was still taken aback. She hated that I came between her and my father, she said softly. So she gave me this name, hoping I would wither away and die early. From the moment she was born, her own mother wanted her dead. How could such a person exist? My heart ached, and I gripped her hand tighter. But your father loved you, didn't he? He didn't love me, Eleanor said with a bitter smile. He was just bound to me by duty. He's different from you. He was a very traditional man. Despite being highly educated, he was stubbornly committed to the idea of family. After I was born, all his resistance died out. He stayed because of responsibility, not because he couldn't bear to leave me. But on his own, he couldn't provide me with a proper life, so he was forced to accept his fate. As she spoke, her voice became hazy and fragmented. Her eyes turned a misty red, as if shrouded in a layer of frost, which made my heart ache. But this isn't your fault, I said, stroking her long, silky hair. The seeds of bitterness your mother sowed shouldn't be the harvest you are forced to reap. Ellie, you are wonderful and brilliant. Your father would surely be proud of the woman you are today. Eleanor gave a bitter laugh and leaned into my chest. Only you always see the good in me. That's why, Silas, you're all I have. She wrapped her arms tightly around me, pleading with absolute sincerity. You must never leave me, or I truly will lose my mind. When I opened my email and saw a flood of harassing spam, I felt a sudden urge to confront the person behind it. Just how deep did her hatred go for her to be unable to stand her own daughter's happiness, to be so determined to destroy it? I took a deep breath. The emails were mostly threats or attachments of photos of my ex-girlfriends alongside stories of their tragic fates, followed by sincere advice for me to stay away from Eleanor. I didn't even give them a second look. I deleted every single one, because I had been so busy with wedding preparations and the headache of my family's guest list lately. Eleanor and I had been in contact a bit less than usual. That was why, when I received an urgent call from her assistant that evening saying she had attempted suicide, I couldn't process it at first. My entire body felt like it had been dropped into a pit of ice. Eleanor had attempted suicide right after meeting her mother. I didn't know what that woman had said, but it had clearly shattered Eleanor's fragile nerves. The moment her mother left, Eleanor slit her wrists. Fortunately, she was found in time. Standing outside the emergency room, I leaned against the wall, my teeth clenched uncontrollably. How can such a mother exist? She must have known exactly how weak Eleanor's mental state was, yet she didn't hesitate for a second to cruelly push her toward death. When Eleanor was rolled out of surgery, her face was deathly pale. The healthy glow I had painstakingly nurtured over the past few days was completely gone, destroyed in an instant. I sat on the chair by her bed, staring at her in a daze for a long time until she finally woke up. The moment she opened her eyes and saw me, her voice trembled as she called my name. Silas. I didn't acknowledge her. I stood up and walked out to call the doctor. After the doctor removed her I stood by the bed, silently staring at her pale face. I stared until she became terrified, her voice frantic. If you're unhappy, Mr. Silas, just scold me. Hit me if you want, but don't be like this. Silas, please don't ignore me. She seemed to have a deep-seated fear of the cold shoulder. Every time I turned my face away, she would panic like a lost child, tugging at my sleeve and begging for forgiveness. But this time, I didn't intend to give in so easily. For an entire day, I ignored her, watching as she sank into confusion, panic, and overwhelming distress. The scar on her wrist was jagged and raw, made worse by the fact that she had clawed at it multiple times until it bled. Even the doctor couldn't help but advise me, please consider the patient's emotional state first. Don't worry, I said softly. Back in the ward, Eleanor looked hollow, her eyes staring blankly out the window. She was too weak, too despondent, like a soulless husk. Eleanor, I called out from 3 meters away, my voice devoid of emotion. She seemed to realize what was coming. She closed her eyes in agony, refusing to answer. But I didn't care about her avoidance and spoke plainly. Let's call off the wedding. Crash. The vase on the nightstand shattered. Her face twisted with a momentary ferocity before collapsing into utter breakdown and despair. She called my name hoarsely, Silas, scrambling with all her limbs to crawl toward me. The wound on her wrist tore open again, blood gushing out. I stepped forward and gripped her wrists, smoothing her disheveled hair. What do you want to do now? Be like your mother? Lock me away and domesticate me until I only obey you? Or would you rather hurt yourself repeatedly than lay a finger on me? Silas. Eleanor looked up at me, startled like a trapped animal. I answered for her. You would choose the second option. No. I leaned down and kissed her lips, a possessive kiss, yet one devoid of lust. When I pulled away, my fingertips pinched her cheek. Ellie, you're not your mother, and I am not your father. We won't end up like them. Ellie, Eleanor, my dear treasure, what exactly are you afraid of? Her mother had been miserable her whole life. Her own marriage wasn't the happy one she had imagined, so she couldn't stand to see Eleanor happy. The fact that Eleanor had so easily obtained the love she desired made that woman feel like a failure, driving her into a blind, hateful rage. She kept insisting to me that Eleanor was her daughter and would inevitably do the same despicable thing she did. She was constantly brainwashing Eleanor. I wanted to check the surveillance footage. Before she left, the last words that woman said to Eleanor were, "Just you wait. As long as you're alive, sooner or later, a day will come when you won't be able to stop yourself from treating him exactly how I treated your father. When that time comes, your father's present state will be his future." Watching this, I let out a mocking laugh. It turns out this person knows Eleanor's father, her own husband, is living a miserable life. He is so miserable that the mere idea of another man repeating his path has become an effective threat. Eleanor didn't want me to become like her father. She didn't want to hurt me, and she loathed the filthy genes in her own body. Under that intense provocation, she chose to end her life without a second thought. Do you feel the difference between you and her? I knelt by the bed, looking deeply into Eleanor's eyes. When she realized her father wanted to leave, all she knew was coercion, threats, and even imprisonment. She did every despicable thing imaginable. But you only knew how to hurt yourself. I took her uninjured right hand and interlaced our fingers. Ellie, do you really think someone like you could ever hurt me? Eleanor's throat tightened. Her eyes were bloodshot, looking at me with a tragic intensity. But I'm afraid, Silas. You're so good, so proud. I'm terrified you'll end up just like my father. We won't. I told her once more. Ellie, our future will be very happy. Human nature isn't just about the intense passion of first sight. We all have dark, primitive desires. But what is precious is the ability to restrain and control them. You feel like one day you might hurt me, yet you controlled that thought. You would rather commit suicide than lay a finger on me. Ellie, believe in yourself. Humanity has evolved for thousands of years. We are no longer beasts living in caves. I looked into her eyes. And please believe in me too. I'm not your mother. I don't follow some ancient, rigid moral code. I am willing to stay by your side only because I like you very, very much. Silas, Ellie, I repeated with absolute gravity, please believe me. I have dated many people. I saw through the game of romance long ago, and I grew disgusted with those selfish women. If I hadn't met you, I probably would never have loved again. Just like in my past life, dying alone on an expedition. Having dated so much in my youth, I had grown jaded, finding everything dull and meaningless. That was until I met Eleanor. She truly respects me and is incredibly obedient. In my presence, she is as docile as a cat with no will of its own. From the pity I felt at the beginning to the love I feel today, everything happened naturally. No man could help but fall for her. Eventually, I arranged a meeting with Eleanor's mother. Sitting in a cafe, I looked at the woman in the luxury suit across from me and asked softly, "I heard your husband used to be a diplomat. Handsome, dashing, and generous." She narrowed her eyes. "Why are you bringing this up?" "And now," I continued, "he can only stay at home. His body has grown obese, his mind has become impoverished and out of touch with the times, and he has become a source of disgust for you. It was only then that you realized the person you loved, the one who stole your heart, was only that charming, spirited man from the past, not the nagging, repulsive old man sitting at home today. Isn't that right?" "Shut up." She tried to interrupt, but I didn't listen. I simply smiled and said, "And the most tragic part is that you are the one who personally authored this disaster. I don't know if he has mistresses, but looking at him now, I bet there are plenty. A love so passionate, yet it ended up dissolving into the torment of domestic triviality. He must have regretted it, wondering why, after everything went exactly your way, it all ceased to be perfect. Let Eleanor go." I spoke softly. "She has suffered enough because of you and your husband. Just because you're unsatisfied with your life doesn't mean you should vent your rage on her. If you stubbornly refuse to wake up." I chuckled softly. "Right now, I am treating you with courtesy only because you are Eleanor's mother. The moment I discover you trying to harm her, I will not show you any mercy." She didn't explode with anger. Instead, she slumped back in her chair, her expression dazed. I voiced the thought she was hiding. "Are you thinking that if your husband had possessed even half the firmness I have, the two of you wouldn't have ended up like this? You're wrong. If I had met someone like you, the end result would have been a fight to the death, both of us destroyed. With a personality like yours, any man who falls into your hands is destined for a miserable fate." I had provoked her, pain radiating from her expression. She stood up and raised her hand to strike me. But my security guard stepped in, blocking her and taking action. Seeing a 50-year-old woman pinned to the ground by guards was, admittedly, a bit of a disgraceful sight. I smiled thinly, looking down at her as I repeated my words. "Ma'am, I told you, I'm not your husband. I'm not a soft target for you to squeeze as you please. I'm telling you one more time, stay away from Eleanor." To drive the point home, I poured a cup of hot coffee over her head. "If you don't, I will never let you off the hook." While I don't believe in using violence to solve problems, I must admit, violence truly can settle many things. Zhang Trung remains the domain of the old elite families. She couldn't win against me. She could only huff coldly before disappearing entirely. After the wedding ceremony, Eleanor leaned into my arms like a child, her smile a bit naive. "Silas, Silas," she whispered in disbelief, "I've finally married you." "You dummy," I said, my heart filled with both pity and love as I patted her back. "You've had a lot to drink. Go take a bath." She gave a silly grin and headed straight for the bathroom. I set out the scented candles I had specially prepared for our wedding night, waiting for her on the bed. I have to admit, compared to Eleanor, I actually know what I'm doing. When she first saw me waiting, her face turned bright red. As I slowly approached, she shifted inch by inch, weakly reaching her hand out to me. I smiled and took it. That night, I had a terrible dream. I dreamed of Eleanor's past life. After I had fled, her mother came to provoke her, saying triumphantly, "Just look. Soon, you won't be able to stop yourself from dragging him back and locking him up, just like I did to your father. Stop hiding it. You are a greedy maniac by nature. Look at your father now. That is his future. You will torment him until he goes insane." I saw Eleanor clutching her head in agony, her face buried low. Inside that room filled with my photos, her expression was fierce as she repeated, "No." She didn't want to hurt me, and so she resolutely chose to end her own life. The dream jolted me awake, my back drenched in a cold sweat. When I opened my eyes, Eleanor was sleeping peacefully in my arms. I lightly stroked her beautiful eyes, got out of bed, and stood before the locked room. I had pilfered her master key ring. I tried them one by one until the door swung open. I stepped into the room that was almost a nightmare. Eleanor's suicide was likely a self-destruction born from crushing pressure and a deep loathing for her own genes. In that past life, she must have stared at this wall of my photos while her blood pooled on the floor, feeling her life slip away. Her gaze would have lingered on my smiles until the very last second. Even then, her eyes were filled with nothing but me. I remembered the Queen of Simps headline from my previous life. It wasn't wrong at all. To this day, I still don't know where Eleanor's love for me originated. She refuses to tell me. No matter how many times I ask, she won't say. Perhaps between a husband and wife, there should be a few secrets. If she doesn't want to speak, I won't ask anymore. Silas. I turned around. Eleanor, who should have been asleep, was standing behind me against the light. She looked despondent and asked anxiously, Do you think I'm a freak? I shook my head and walked over to take her ice-cold hand. Why are you awake? You weren't there, she said, looking aggrieved. And my feet are cold. I couldn't help but laugh. When we first met, she was so cold and distant, not even knowing how to answer me. Now, she's mastered the art of acting spoiled. Whether child or adult, once someone enjoys being favored, they naturally reveal the playful, needy side of a little sprite. She realized what she'd said, then tugged at my sleeve again, asking cautiously, Do you really not think I'm a freak? No, I replied. I just find it a bit novel. I spoke honestly. I didn't realize you liked me since so early on. Don't you resent me? I like you, so why would I resent you? Eleanor's cheeks turned crimson. She wrapped her arms around my waist. Are you really going to be this good to me? Does it mean no matter what I do, you'll always spoil me? I just believe that you won't harm me. I turned around and caressed her neck. I trust your character. To a person who would rather hurt themselves than touch a hair on my head, I refuse to harbor any ill intent or suspicion. True feelings aren't easy to come by in this world, and mutual love is even harder to find. I cherish Eleanor's feelings just as much as she cherishes mine. But a child who receives such exclusive favor will inevitably lose their mind the moment that favor is threatened. This was exactly Eleanor's attitude toward Haley now. I had to put in a lot of effort just to stop her from throwing away a gift Haley had sent me. Haley had given me a hand-knitted pajama set with a tiny heart embroidered on the chest. It was a lingering, ambiguous gesture. The moment Eleanor saw it, she was on the verge of losing it, but I stepped in. I sat calmly on the sofa, ignoring her outburst and picking up the pajamas. I don't see what's so great about this, she muttered, leaning in close and demanding a hug. Her warm breath fanned against my neck. She was clearly dissatisfied but didn't dare speak out, only calling me softly, hubby. All right, I sighed, nursing a headache as I took her hand and stuffed the pajamas into it. You deal with it, but don't just throw it out. It would be awkward if she found out. So, Eleanor took them and shredded them to pieces to vent her frustration. I watched in silence for a moment before I couldn't help but ask, Do you and Haley have some kind of ancient feud? Her movements paused. I found her eyesore for a long time. She was clearly so close to you, yet she kept tangling herself up with other men. She wasn't loyal at all. She dated boyfriends. So, does that mean I wasn't allowed to have girlfriends? Eleanor's double standard almost made me laugh, but I felt it wasn't the right time. I held it back. It doesn't matter now, I smiled, kissing her to comfort her. I'm with you now, and she can't interfere anymore, right? Eleanor's face turned bright red. She turned away, refusing to look at me, and muttered a soft response. Truthfully, I wasn't intentionally trying to cure her. I just treated her like a normal person. I did my best to make her happy and coaxed her like a child. By giving her a total sense of security, I compensated for all the insecurity and sensitivity left behind by her biological family. Naturally, she began to improve significantly. She grew more dependent on me every day, but she also grew more confident, walking with her head held high. Her assistant once spoke to me, noting that having one's emotional state entirely dependent on another person isn't exactly healthy. But there was really no other way. She is perhaps a love-crazed woman. He didn't dare say those 3 words out loud, and I didn't say them for him. As long as we both understand it, that's enough. In truth, I also see the potential danger. Her spiritual core is anchored in another person rather than herself. This means that if anything ever happened to me, her spirit would not be able to find the strength to carry on living. I let out a soft sigh, but life is rarely perfect. Since I have accepted her, I must also accept the multifaceted nature of her personality. I have no desire to force her to change anything. In a healthy, intimate relationship, both people should find joy and spiritual fulfillment within it, rather than suffering through forced transformations. I simply hope she can be happy. Everything else is secondary. On our 3rd anniversary, Eleanor became pregnant. She was incredibly tense, even showing signs of wanting to retreat, and was so anxious she couldn't sleep. I couldn't help but ask her what was wrong. She clung to me, sounding both sad and pathetic. "Hubby, I'm scared I won't be a good mother. If I don't raise the child well, will you blame me?" "I never would." I ruffled her hair. "My wife will always be more important to me than our children. A child born into our family certainly won't starve. How they grow up and the lives they choose to lead are for them to decide. Wife, you and I are the ones who will be companions for a lifetime." Her eyes widened, and she tried to speak but only managed a few tiny, incoherent sounds. Then she whispered aggrievedly, "Hubby, you're so strange." Perhaps so. Most people in East Asian cultures, after having children, tend to view themselves as candles burning away for their offspring, spending their whole lives paving the way for the next generation. I don't want that. Life is only a few short decades. If you don't live for yourself, then what is the point? Eleanor isn't quite like me. She yearns so deeply for a family. In her mind, a tall, handsome husband and children, whether obedient or noisy, represent the most beautiful vision of happiness. "Actually, I think you'll do a wonderful job," I told her. "All the things you longed for when you were small will be given to your child instead. You will be so good to them. In the process of being a good mother, you will find healing. It will make up for the sad and painful childhood you endured. That's why I want us to have a child." For the child, Eleanor hugged me before finally saying, "You are the most important person to me. I want to have a baby. I will definitely treat them well. Very, very well." "Yes." I smiled and told her that I believed her. I believe that she will be great and she will be happy. She will live to be 100 years old. I will stay by her side, watching her live a smooth, healthy, and blissful life. We will have a very, very good future. Epilogue. What Eleanor never told Silas. Eleanor never told Silas that the first time she ever saw him was by a filthy drainage ditch behind their high school. Back then, she was covered in grime, smelling of rot, and so hungry she felt she was dying as she scavenged through a trash can for scraps. Then she met Silas. At that moment, he looked like an angel, dressed in his school uniform, standing at the end of the alley. He watched her calmly for a moment, his eyes flickering with pity. He reached into his pocket, pulled out $2,000, and handed it to her. "Go find some other work to do," he said, his teenage voice gentle. "Don't do things that even you don't like anymore." Eleanor didn't know why he helped her. Perhaps it was empathy, pity, or simply a chance encounter by someone with time to spare. She only knew that Silas had saved her life. She used those $2,000 to buy a bus ticket to another province. Working day and night, she relied on her innate talent to invest in stocks and managed to catch the final wave of the internet era. By the time she returned to River City, she was dressed in silks and satins, accompanied by a vast team of advisors. By then, Silas was already a well-known playboy in River City. On average, he changed girlfriends every 2 months, living a life of luxury and indulgence. Eleanor wasn't surprised. She thought that a man as handsome and kind as Silas was born to be like that, hunted and adored by crowds of women. But she would also feel sad. Perhaps due to the lowliness and lack of shame in her genes, she often felt a beast-like desire to rush forward, lock him up, and take him by force. This was wrong, and she tried desperately to suppress it. The consequence of that suppression was a spiritual tearing. She developed a very serious mental illness. Her decision to go to the Silas family to force a marriage alliance was a reckless gamble. She yearned too much to hold that divine boy. Her loneliness tortured her day and night, leaving her restless, almost wishing for her own destruction. But if Silas had not agreed, she would never have forced him. She did not want to become a shameless person like her mother. Later, that boy took the initiative to walk toward her. Eleanor felt that this life was finally worth living. In the 6th year of their marriage, when their child was 2 years old, Eleanor dreamed of her past life. She died in that cold, dark, dusty, and gloomy room. She saw Silas placing a fresh rose beside her corpse. That night, Eleanor stood on the balcony until dawn. Her eyes were red as she stared at the bright moon in the sky. Looking at the round moon cake her husband had bought, Eleanor felt an indescribable sorrow. If her husband had truly run away, then her death would have been a very natural conclusion. In her current, stable emotional state, she couldn't imagine the extremity and despair of that version of herself. But then she thought it was quite normal. What is there that a madwoman wouldn't do? And her husband in this life did not run away. What's wrong? Silas wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. You seemed a bit down since this afternoon. Eleanor felt a surge of grievance and wanted to act spoiled with her husband. But when she opened her mouth, she didn't know what to say. She hopped into his arms, wrapping her legs around his lean waist. After nuzzling against his neck for a long time, she felt there was no need to ask anything. Silas never liked it when she brought up the past. He always said he wanted to live well for the days to come. Therefore, she didn't want to dwell on it anymore. No matter what, in this life, he was by her side. She smiled and whispered, I love you so much, hubby.